Hi, grade 11s. We're going on to a new section within finance called depreciation. Again, guys, you can just pause the video and you can copy down these notes into your book. So let's just have a look and see what this is all about. Depreciation is the loss of value of an asset over time due to age or use. For example, when you buy a car, as soon as you drive that car off the floor, it's not worth what you bought it anymore. It depreciates in value. Okay. It is standard accounting practice to correctly value an asset by making allowance for depreciation. The book value of an asset is the value after depreciation has been taken into account. Please highlight that in case a question asks for what the book value is. Different types of assets, compare computers and vehicles, for example, will have different lifespans. So, for example, a vehicle will have a longer lifespan than a computer. I mean, you get a computer these days, in the next 3 years, you need to replace it. Whereas a car, you can have it for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, all right? The scrap value of an asset is the value after its useful life. This is going to be important in a second, guys. I'll show you now. Our first type of depreciation that we're going to look at is straight line depreciation. And what I want you guys to highlight from this, so straight line depreciation is going to be this formula over here. And it looks very similar to your simple interest formula, except that it has a minus. This formula is not given to you on your formula sheet, but what you can do is you can just use the simple interest and just change the positive to a negative. And let's see what it's all about. Straight line depreciation is analogous with simple interest. Like I said, you can compare the two. So straight line is basically simple interest, but in terms of depreciation. Depreciation each year is calculated based on the initial purchase price only. So similar to what we did when we invested. You would only get interest on the deposited amount. Asset value therefore decreases by the same amount every year in a linear way. Under straight line depreciation, asset value can decrease to zero. Please highlight that. So straight line can decrease to a value of zero over a period of time. It is therefore used for relatively inexpensive assets with short lifespans and little or no resale value. Scrap value. If a question mentions scrap value, you know you're going to be using a straight line depreciation and your final answer will be zero. The accumulated amount will be zero. We'll see this in a second with an example. The straight line depreciation formula is A is equal to P 1 minus I times N. You guys can pause and copy that down. The next one that we're going on to is the reducing balance depreciation. And if we skip just to the end, the reducing balance depreciation formula is, highlight this, guys. This looks very similar to your compound interest, except that it has a minus there instead of a plus. Reducing balance depreciation is analogous with compound interest. Let's highlight that. So reducing balance, compound interest. Again, guys, this formula is not given on your formula sheet. So if they say reducing balance, all you have to do is look on the formula sheet for your compound interest and then just change the plus to a minus. Depreciation each year is calculated based on the previous book value so that it takes previous depreciation into account. It is not based on the initial purchase price only. This is the same as your normal compound interest. If you had to invest with it, you get interest on your interest. So basically here, you're getting depreciation on your depreciation. Loss in asset value therefore decreases every year as the asset value decreases. Under reducing balance depreciation, assets always have some residual value at the end of the period. It is therefore used for more expensive assets with longer lifespans and more significant resale values, or the scrap value. For example, vehicles. So if you resell your car after 5 years, obviously it's not going to be worth the amount that you bought it for, but you will still get some amount for it. Whereas compared to simple interest one, the straight line one, you can get a zero value. For example, a computer. No one wants to buy a computer that's 10 years old. Okay. The reducing balance depreciation formula is given as this. If we look at the first example, it's saying here a construction company buys earth moving equipment valued at 98 million rand. The company's accountant depreciates the equipment at 14% per annum on a reducing balance basis. Calculate the book value of the equipment after 6 years. They've been nice here and they've told us that it's a reducing balance. Example 1. As I do with the similar to what I did with the simple and the compound interest questions, I like to write up here A equals P equals I equals N equals. Then I extract the information from the question and it's just a case of plugging this into the formula. Now they've told us it's a reducing balance, and remember your reducing balance is similar to your compound interest. So it's A is equal to P 1 minus I to the power of N. That is the only difference. Now, if we go through this question, they are asking for calculate the book value. That is the accumulated amount after a depreciation of some time period. Our principal amount is what this thing is worth initially. Now, guys, don't just write 98. Write out the full number. So it'll be 98 million. The interest, they told us, is 14%. We write that as 14 over 100. And then the time period, they told us, was 6 years. Plug these into the formula. And just put that on the calculator and you can get your final amount. Now remember, again, it's finance, guys. You need to round off your answer to 2 decimal places. And we get 39,647,589 Rand and 4 cents. That means that after 6 years, this equipment has depreciated from 98 million to 39 million. We'll go on to the next example. A restorator installs kitchen equipment costing 110,000 Rand. Determine the assumed depreciation rate. In other words, we've got to calculate the I to 1 decimal place if the scrap value of the equipment is 0. Now remember, if a scrap value goes to 0, it is going to be the linear or the straight line depreciation. Example 2. A equals P equals I equals N equals. Now, because they told us that we're getting a scrap value of 0, I know that it's going to be a straight line depreciation. So we get A is equal to P 1 minus I times N, similar to the simple interest. All right, now what we need to do is we now need to extract the information from here. We know that the accumulated amount will be 0. The principal amount, the start-off amount, will be 110,000. The interest, we don't know. That is what we're going to figure out. That's what they said here. Determine the assumed depreciation rate. And our time period is 7 years. All we have to do now is just plug these into our formula. I, we don't know, times by 7. What we need to do here, guys, is our unknown is this I. That's what we need to calculate. So I'm going to get rid of things like a normal equation. First of all, I'm going to divide both sides by 110,000. So that will just give us 0 over there. Here we're left with 1 minus 7i. Take the 7i to the other side. Divide by 7. Now what we need to do is we always need to convert this I into a percent. In order to get this into a percent, we need to multiply it by 100. And that's how we convert things into percent. And remember, the question also says here we need to convert this to 1 decimal place. If we do this on the calculator, we will get an interest rate of 14.3%. And guys, just remember that this is a per annum rate. It's every year. All right. So for homework, what you can do for me is exercise 12.7, number 2, 4, 5, 7, 12, and 13. Thanks, guys.